welcome everyone. Thank you for being here on time. Today we are here to talk about developing modern lifelong learners, and we have a special guest, who I will present very soon. This topic today we will discuss about learning in the modern workplace. That is more than being trained or studying e-learning courses. So teachers need to prepare individuals with the new skills to become independent, continuous workplace learners. So in this seminar, we aim to outline the factors impacting the world of work and what it means for employees of the future, and also describe what it means to be a modern lifelong learner and how teachers and others can help our students to reach this. But before we go into our topic and before I introduce our expert, I would like to give just some instructions on how to proceed during this seminar. And you are more than welcome to express yourself using these icons. So at any time you can express yourself, you can agree, disagree. Unfortunately, we cannot give you the floor to speak. Maybe one or two at some point in this seminar, but you are always free to raise your hand and then we will see what can be done. But you can also, again, agree, disagree, ask us to speak louder, softer, and so on. So feel free to participate, not only using the chat box, but also using these icons. Some rules of etiquette to participate in these seminars. We kindly ask you to stay on topic on the chat box. Of course, it's very nice to see all the welcoming messages. Please continue doing so. But then once we start, let's try to keep as much as possible on the topic, and let's be mindful of our writing. If you have problems with the sound, most likely you are not listening to me, but at least you can see what is written in this slide. If at some point you have some sound issues, some connection issues, it's always good to come out and then come in again. It's the best solution. Okay, but to listen, you need to have these two icons turned green. So let's go for our expert today. I have the pleasure, I'm really excited with this seminar. It's really good to have Jane Hart with us here today. And Jane Hart is the director of the Center of Modern Workplace Learning. She has been advising businesses for over 30 years and set up the Center for Modern Workplace Learning to help organizations and learning professionals modernize their approaches to workplace learning, not just by updating their training practices, but by enabling and supporting continuous learning. Jane is an international speaker on modern approaches to workplace learning, and she's the editor of the Modern Workplace Learning magazine. I'm not sure if you are familiar with this magazine, and also the author of a number of books, including Modern Workplace Learning 2018, as well as the online resources Continuous Improvement, Learning and Development, and the Guide to Modern Professional Learning, which resources you will hear more about during today's seminar. Jane is also the founder of the Center for Learning and Performance Technologies, and each year she compiles a top tools for learning list, which I also think that we will listen about it today. So with no further ado, I will upload now your slides. I'll put up your slides and I'll hide mine. Welcome, Jane. It's really a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Thanks very much, Ruta. I hope you can hear me okay. Everything okay your end? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll just wait for my slides to appear. At the moment, they're just loading here. So I hope that's going to be okay. Nothing happening yet. But whilst they're loading, I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me to present to you on this session on developing modern lifelong learners. And it's great to see so many people from Europe and wider than Europe, really, looking at where people have come from. I don't know how many people know about me and my work, but hopefully if you do, you've seen some of the resources that I've created, but if you haven't heard about me, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing and share quite a lot of stuff with you. So you don't need to take lots of notes. There'll be an opportunity to download quite a few of these resources here and find out more. Anyway, let's get started. And the theme today then is developing modern lifelong learners. And I wanted to start by sharing a statement with you, which I think is really important and which I believe strongly. And that is that in this new world of work that we are pretty much in and moving faster into nowadays, the future belongs to those who can learn for themselves rather than those who wait to be taught or trained. So quite a big statement that, but in relation to that statement, what I'd like to talk about then today is why I think that's the case, why I believe that statement is true, what it means for individuals, and of course, how teachers and other people can help to prepare today's students for tomorrow's world. So let's first have a think about what happened in the old world of work. And the old world of work wasn't so many years ago, really. It still is probably for some places, but the model was that everyone went to school and perhaps university as well, if they're lucky to be educated. And what they learned there lasted them a lifetime, perhaps with a bit of topping up here and there in the form of some professional development. But essentially, education took place in those early years up to about 18. But in this new world of work, education is not going to be enough. And in fact, many people say that the stuff that you learn at college is likely to be out of date now before the loan is paid off. A college degree will be out of date before the loan is paid off. So why is this the fact? I would like to take a little look at some of the factors influencing such a bold statement. And I think one of the main factors is the fact that information is doubling at an alarming rate. Back in 1982, in a book called Critical Paths, the futurist Buckminster Fuller estimated that up until 1900s, knowledge was doubling at about every century. So every 100 years, knowledge doubled. But by 1945, it was doubling every 25 years. And by 1982, it was doubling every year, 12 to 13 months. And then IBM took over, and then it estimated that by 2020, only a few years down the line, human knowledge will be doubling every 12 hours. Now, that is alarming, but alongside the fact that information is growing exponentially, the half-life of knowledge is decreasing. What do I mean by the half-life of knowledge? Well, Wikipedia tells us that the half-life of knowledge is the amount of time that has to elapse before half the knowledge in a particular area is superseded or shown to be untrue. And for example, an engineering degree went from having a half-life of 35 years in around 1930 to around 10 years in 1960. And according to some, the half-life of skills is diminishing even faster, with some skills only having an 18-month window, after which time they are decreasing rapidly and out of date. And added to all that, individuals are now living longer lives, and life expectancy continues to rise. Many people are routinely working now for 60 or 70 years. And Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott from business school talk about this and the implications of living and working in an age of longevity. And they produced this great book called The 100-Year Life, which I would recommend you having a look at because it's a very good read and tells us a lot about the implications, as I said, of a longer life and a longer working life too. And one of these implications is that the traditional three-stage model of education, work and retirement, which we've all become very familiar with, will no longer apply. So we won't just go to school, we won't just go into the workplace, and we won't just retire. What's going to replace it is something which is a multi-stage model, where sometimes individuals will be in full employment, sometimes freelancing in the so-called freelance or gig economy, sometimes in education. But the consequence is that this traditional job for life model will disappear and will be replaced by a life of jobs model. And they explain that the flexible nature of this modern workplace we are now in will mean that, say, a 15-year-old student now is likely to navigate a portfolio of 17 jobs in 5 different industries. And it's also thought that individuals will change specializations more than once over their career, which will mean building a portfolio of skills over a collection of experiences that will in turn support multiple careers. So this is the reality of today's ever-changing world. And of course, it poses challenges to us all. But one thing is clear, as Linda and Andrew say, as working lives become longer, the need for lifelong learning will increase. And we've talked about the importance of lifelong learning for years and years and years, but it's clear it's even more important than ever. Now, I've just mentioned a few of the things that I think are influencing the fact that lifelong learning is becoming really important. So I wondered, are there anything else that you think about that's going to impact the need for lifelong learning? Perhaps you could put some thoughts in the chat and we'll pause a moment whilst you do that to have a look at what you think. What do you think other factors that I haven't mentioned are going to impact the need for lifelong learning? Don't feel shy. Let's see what you can come up with. Technology. Absolutely. The use of new technology is changing jobs fast. We're moving into an era of digital transformation, which is not just applying technology to new jobs, it's actually changing the whole way jobs take place. Generation gaps now, there's an awful lot of thinking about generational attitudes, but certainly we've got a workplace full of different generations. I think this is the first time in the history of the workforce that we've got something like 4 or 5 different generations operating in the workplace. Working conditions are changing. The need for a sustainable world. All of these things are impacting the world of work. It's rapidly changing, as we've seen. Globalization. And much more. New jobs, change jobs, jobs will be replaced, jobs will go. But the whole thing about change, constant change, will be the new normal. Okay, so let's press on a bit then and think about, I'd like to ask the question, think about what lifelong learning now means in the modern era. As I mentioned in the past, it probably involved a little bit of topping up professional development from time to time on top of what you've learned in school or university. But what does it mean today to be a modern lifelong learner? Now, there's lots of people been thinking about this, and my own research gives me some thoughts and insight into perhaps the way it's going. As Ruta mentioned, I've been carrying out a survey for the last 12 years, which I've called the Top Tools for Learning survey. You might have heard about it, you might have seen it, but what I do is I invite learning professionals from around the world to vote for their top 10 tools for learning. So that's tools for their own personal or professional learning, for use in the workplace or in education. And then from that, I generate the top tools for learning from their votes. So for the first 9 years, I created a top 100 tools for learning. But in 2016, to celebrate the 10th year, I expanded it to the top 200 tools for learning. And here then is this year's top 200 tools for learning 2018. Oops, that slide looking rather odd. It should have lots of tools on it, so I don't know if it's going to build, but it's not looking too good at the moment. That slide should be packed with tools, so I don't know what's happened to that slide. So that's rather unfortunate that you can't see them. But anyway, there were 200 tools on that slide there, and I was going to talk you through. So let's hope this bears okay for the next slides coming up, because they've got quite a few pictures on them. But 200 tools was rather a lot, and people were thinking, how can you use all these tools? Because they vary from in terms of their use. So what I then did was I created 3 separate lists, and one of them was the top 100 tools for personal and professional learning. And looking at that, unfortunately, it doesn't look an awful lot better in terms of slides, because we've only got a few appearing on there. There should be 100 tools on there. So the slides, actually, you can get hold of yourself, so it's not the end of the world. And Ruta, if you could put into the chat the URL where people can find those tools, that would be great, because then they can have a look at them. There's some infographics there that I've created. They're actually interactive infographics, so if you see the whole set of tools, you can just click on one tool and you can find out more about them. So can we put that link into the chat?
Yes.
There? Thank you. Then
I'm
people
also
can.
Sorry, I'm also trying to transform your presentation into a PDF so that they can actually see what you are saying. The whole cloud of. Okay. So for a moment, I'll stop sharing this and I'll upload again. Okay.
Okay, that's great. That's good. I hopefully will see those slides then. But the point is that there are many people are using many tools now for learning, and they're not just about tools for training or studying. You will see when you get this slide appears that they're used for many different ways, and I think that's really important to bear in mind, and I'm going to talk more about that later, that when we talk about learning, we're not just talking about training or teaching or studying, we're talking about learning in its widest sense. And from that list, of that top 100 tools list, I've been analysing every year what people are doing. Let's have a look and see what happens now. Let's see if this is looking better. Here we go. Oh, see if there we go. There's a slide. That's much better. Okay, so we've got 200 tools on there. I don't know how many of you recognize, how many of you use, but a huge range of tools. And when we look at the top 100 for personal learning, we can see that obviously fewer there, but interestingly, what I wanted to show you is that an analysis of it shows that people are learning in many different ways and in different places. And I think it's important to have a look at that, because we can see and use it to help others learn too. I think, first of all, when we think about modern professionals, as I call them, they're learning not just from inside their workplace, but also outside as well. That's it. They don't just rely on companies to train them or for whatever they provide within them. They also learn for themselves regularly and irregularly, daily, sometimes more often. And so whilst their organizations train them irregularly, and whilst they attend some conferences for themselves, they also make great use of web resources and as well as internal resources from time to time. But I think more significantly than that is that they learn continuously by receiving a flow of content to them, as well as interacting with their professional networks, as well as interacting with their managers and doing their day job and working with their team. So, as I said earlier, I think the thing to take away from all this is that all this is learning, but it's not the sort of learning that we've traditionally thought of. They do learn from courses and traditional formal stuff, organized experiences, but they're also learning from the informal, self-organized stuff, and even accidentally or serendipitously from other experiences like working there, learning as they work. So there's a lot of discussion about this learning word, and for me, learning is an internal process. It's something that happens in here. It's not something you do to somebody or you deliver to somebody, but it can happen through many, many different ways, through many stimuli. So just being taught or trained is one, but it's not the only way that we learn. And it's clear from these tools that modern professionals learn in many different ways for many different reasons. So let's have a look at some of those reasons. First of all, of course, they learn, they want to acquire a new body of knowledge or skills. That's clear. And that's what they tend to use the formal ways of learning for. And of course, in the workplace, they use those either created by their organizations to become compliant or conformant. But as I mentioned earlier, they tend to use these more informal ways to solve their own personal performance problems. In the moment, they have a problem and they just need to solve it themselves. So they tend to go to resources or their network or their internal colleagues or some internal resources. There are different ways they do that. But they also learn informally and continuously in order to keep up to date with what's happening in their industry and network and the profession. And they do that by receiving a flow of content and interacting with their network too. But that's one way they can just little by little keep up to date with their profession. And of course, as we've seen, they learn to do their job by doing their job, by just carrying out their daily tasks, interacting with their managers, getting feedback, and interacting with their team. And largely that is informal ways of learning. And of course, there are other reasons to learn, for inspiration, for innovation, for just the joy of learning. It's not just to solve problems. Some people love to learn. Not everybody does, of course, and we're all different. Some people, really find great pleasure in learning just for the sake of it, whereas other people at the other end of the spectrum are quite happy to wait and be taught stuff and have no interest in going out and doing things for themselves. But as I've said, that approach really isn't going to be enough nowadays. So what we need to do is help our people to learn in some of these other ways so that they can survive in the new world of work. Just waiting to be trained isn't going to be enough. And just taking a few courses now and again isn't going to be enough. So for me, education needs to be much more about preparing today's students for tomorrow's world of work, not just filling their heads with content, which, as we can see, will be out of date very, very quickly, but about helping them continuously learn, not through just studying, but through all kinds of stimuli, helping them to absorb that information and getting the most out of everyday experiences, whether they're classified as learning experiences or working experiences or daily experiences. But I think one thing is for certain, individuals are going to need to take much more responsibility for their own self-improvement and self-development. They will not be, we cannot just spoon feed them what they need to do their jobs. That might be okay for a few months even. So what we need to build is self-reliance, which means ensuring they have the confidence to exercise their own powers of judgment. And we need to ensure they're self-sufficient, which means they have the ability and the resources to take care of themselves with help. So when we talk about self-reliance, people think it's about being some sort of maverick going out and doing things themselves, but it's much more about having the desire and the initiative and the resolve to address anything within their sphere of responsibility. In other words, we want to build independent continuous learners, or what I call modern professional learners or modern lifelong learners. And that requires three things: a new learning mindset. They need to be equipped with a digital learning tool set, and they need to have a new skill set in order to thrive in this modern world of work. By mindset, I mean appreciate that learning happens in many different ways. You don't have to just go to a course to learn something. And for me, that is quite a big, big change in attitude in terms of learning. Learning is considered to be equivalent to training or studying or teaching, but we now need to help them think, well, learning is something I do for myself, and it can happen in many different ways. I can put myself into the situation of learning something new in a formal way, or I can take advantage of all the other informal ways of learning. And so also I mentioned a tool set and a new skill set. And that's what I want to talk to you about in a minute. But before I do that, I'd just like to ask you a question, and that is, what new skills do you think individuals will need to have, in order to become modern lifelong learners? What new skills will they need to have? So I'll pause for a minute. Let's see if we can put some more thoughts into the chat box there. What new skills do they need to have to become modern lifelong learners? Critical thinking, yeah. Open critical mind, I think this is clear, great. Information literacy, analysing information, cooperation, digital skills, flexibility, absolutely, I agree, 100%. Creativity, adaptability, excellent, yeah. Curiosity, very key, strong motivation, communication, self-confidence, empathy. So I agree 100% with all these. These are key sort of higher level skills that people need to have. But in this presentation, what I wanted to focus on is how you can equip your people with a digital learning tool set and skill set so that they can use those to take them into the future. Now, a lot of what you've been mentioning here, which is essential, are what are being termed 21st century skills. And they are really key. But what I want to focus on here is how you can help individuals by equipping them with some very simple tools that, if they use them with good effect, will take them a long way. Now, of course, some of these other skills on top of that will be important, but I just want to focus on some very practical, pragmatic tools and skills for the future. So what I'd like to share with you is what I've called the Modern Professionals Digital Learning Toolkit for 2019. And I created this from the top 100 tools for personal and professional learning. I just showed you that big mass of tools, well, the 100 tools that people are using, and I categorized them. And I've categorized them into 5 key tool areas. And I'd like to talk you through these as well as discuss some of the underlying skills to make the good use of them and what you can do to help your people, your students, do that. Many of them you're probably familiar with, but let me just sort of reiterate how important they are. So let's start with the first area, the red area, web courses, resources and tools. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to studying, there are some great platforms that people are using. And these, the ones you can see here, these are the ones that people have chosen as being really significant for them. And it means that they can just take a course whenever they want to. And in fact, in some instances, they can now take a whole degree online. edX, for instance, has just announced that. But there are quite a differences between these different platforms and ways to study online. Some you can just sign up for and take as you like when you want to on your own. Others you need to join a scheduled cohort, and it's a much more social experience. Others, cater for large groups of people in massive open online courses, the MOOCs that are around. Some as much more smaller, well-defined groups. Others, like Highbrow, which is on the list, deliver some short daily lessons to your inbox. So in other words, even online education or web courses are no longer one size fits all. There are many different approaches. And I think, therefore, it means that the best thing to do is not just tell your students about them. You need to introduce them to the different platforms for sure, but also what they have to offer, and help them find the one that suits them best. Not just the content that it's going to offer them, the skills and the knowledge it's going to offer them, but how the interaction or the use of them is going to suit them best. Because we all like to study in different ways. Some of us prefer to do it on our own, quietly. Others want to be alongside others. So I think it's about helping them match their own preferences with the new skills and knowledge they want to acquire. And of course, new courses and platforms are coming all the time, so it'd be important also to show people how to keep up with new courses and find the ones that are going to be of interest and value to them, what new skills and knowledge is being presented. And as I showed, from time to time, individuals need to solve ad hoc learning and performance problems. So in other words, they want immediate access to something that's going to help them learn just in time, in the moment. And we all know that the web is full of great resources. But I think it'd be a very useful activity to introduce them to some reputable sources in the different formats, whether it's videos, podcasts, or slide sets, or book summaries, or audiobooks. And it's clear people like to use different types of resources for different purposes. So again, it's not just saying, here is a set of resources. It'd be about offering them a whole wide range of different places that are reputable and trusted for them to find what they need when they need it. So if they have a problem, they can almost go there straight away because they know that's where they're going to find an answer that they can trust. And of course, they need all the relevant players and readers to access them. So the toolkit here, includes some of the popular ones. And of course, there'll be times when individuals need to search for their own stuff, but maybe they can't find something that they need in the platforms or resources that they trust. And it means they've got to search for it themselves. Well, Google is, of course, the most popular search engine, but there are other options, including that one on the right there, DuckDuckGo, which is becoming quite popular because it doesn't track your searches like Google does. So I think it's important not to just automatically go to Google, but to introduce them to some of the other search engines, the other options, and help them identify what suits them. Might be important, for instance, to show them the difference between Google and Google Scholar. What can they do differently? And what's the difference between Google and Bing, for instance? But apart from that, I think the key vital new skill for individuals is advanced web skills, web search skills. Everybody knows how to enter some text into Google and find the results come up, but not many know how to refine those searches in order to reduce the number of results to a manageable and appropriate number where they can really find something that they want. And once they've come up with those results, the next thing they're going to need to know is how to validate those resources to ensure they are reliable. They might recognize something. And whilst in some circumstances, knowing the source and the currency of a resource might not be important. So for instance, if you're trying to solve a software problem and you don't know how to carry out a task, it doesn't really matter where the source of that material is from, as long as it solves your problem for you. In other cases, it will be absolutely imperative for them to have reliable resources. If it's in an academic essay or report or workplace report or something. And of course, it's going to be important that individuals cite their sources appropriately and not just rip off other people's work. And I know in education we do a lot in that area, but when people are out on the web, they seem to forget about all that, and it's very easy to reuse work without citing appropriately. So I think that's a skill that we need to really reinforce for the future, that just because it's on the web doesn't mean it's free to use. We need to source it and cite it appropriately. And it also goes without saying that people need fundamentally a good web browser. We take that for granted nowadays, but web browsers do so much more than just searching for web pages or displaying web pages. And many have got masses of extensions and plugins. And also, you don't have to stick with the one you've got on your laptop either. And I think that's something we need to help people recognize. Understand what these other browsers have to offer and help them find the one that works for them. It might be the one that they've got on their laptop, but help them look into some of the tools, other browsers available. You haven't got to stick with just Explorer or Edge, but Google Chrome or Firefox, on what they have, what do they offer that really might be useful for an individual, since this is the most fundamental tool they're going to use on the web. But more significantly, I think it's about helping individuals source or curate, if you like, a flow of daily new content, new ideas, new resources, and so forth. This is one of the key new ways, I think, of becoming a modern lifelong learner. If you just spend 20 to 30 minutes a day reading something new, that adds up to hundreds of hours over a year. And what's more, just a little bit of news, a little bit of content every day adds up to quite a large body of knowledge. And for me, it's been an important way for me to keep learning constantly. And some people find this way of learning much more valuable than taking a course. I was reading the other day an article in the Guardian newspaper about a lady who was on a teacher training course, and she said that during this year of enforced training, I avidly read teaching magazines and websites. Each week, excellent teaching advice was dispensed by fellow university teachers on how to discuss divisive topics in class. They gave tips for innovative forms of assessment and discussed the advantages and disadvantages of new e-learning technologies. I learned more from these columns than the dry lectures in my formal teacher training. And there are now many platforms that will go out and scour the web for new stuff. Well, one of the ones that tends to get overlooked and I think is really very valuable in this day and age is to have some form of RSS aggregator, a news aggregator, like Feedly. And the point about that is that new resources come to you. You don't have to go out and find stuff. So I think one of the things to do for students is to help them find some interesting blogs and websites that they can subscribe to in something like Feedly. And then that will bring them their daily dose of learning. You haven't got to do it for them. You can just point them in the direction of some really useful places for them to get their daily dose of learning. But of course, then it's also important to show them how not to get overwhelmed with it all. If they're having something come in every day, it could easily add up. So it's going to be important to show them they don't have to read every word. They need to get good at skimming and scanning text to find some of the gems from what they read. And if it all gets too much, just press that delete button, because it's better to have a blank screen, and if it's important, something will come back in some other way. So dealing with information overload is really important. It's not just saying you must wade through all this content. It's about being discriminatory about what you do read and getting the value out of it. But it's not about just receiving lots of information. It's important that individuals try to keep track of what they find and learn, as well as try and make sense of it all and see patterns in what they are discovering. And I think for me, one of the really key skills for modern lifelong learners is personal learning management. That's about managing their own learning, not waiting for someone to do it for them in some sort of learning management system or course management system, but doing for themselves. And there are a number of ways that they can do that now. They might do it in a more formal way, using a platform, a personal learning platform like Degreed, for instance, or PebblePad, which allows them to set up an account and keeps track of all the things that they can find continuously, or courses or whatever. Or they might just do it informally, and that's what a lot of people are doing. They're using digital notebooks like OneNote or Evernote to clip resources and make notes and record their daily learning experiences and then share them with others too. And of course, there are those who are using a blogging tool, which provides them with a good opportunity to reflect on what they've learned, as well as extend that blog actually into some form of digital portfolio to evidence and display their new learning or skills or knowledge or whatever it is. But I think the big message here is about time we need to help them manage their own learning and development, not wait for somebody else to do it for them. Now, another important way to learn continuously is to interact on a regular basis with your professional network, social networks and communities. And in the academic world, you call this a personal learning network. In the professional world, they tend to call it a professional network. But it's another key way of getting a daily dose of new ideas and resources. And I've been on Twitter for 10 years now. And for me, it's been the most essential way to keep up with what's happening in my industry. Now, building a professional network, building a PLN takes time and effort. So I think it's something that you can start to help your people with. And I've worked with universities to do this, that it's not just about providing them with content, it's about providing them with links to people, resources, or people who are talking about their topic professionally on the web, on social networks. And it's about helping them find those relevant people who are going to bring some interesting stuff so they can interact with them, or just listen to what they have to say, or find some of the resources that they're sharing. But I think the important thing, once again, is, you can advise people on those they might find useful, but at the end of the day, it's their network. They need to have value from it. So the people should bring them value. And if somebody's not bringing them value, they should unfollow them or whatever it takes. It's about getting value. You don't just have to keep following somebody because you started. Now, there's a huge amount to talk about professional networking and building a network. And unfortunately, from time constraints, I haven't got the opportunity to talk to you about that. But I'll give you some resources at the end, which perhaps you can look at if you're interested in following that through, how you can help somebody build a professional network. But I wanted to look further into these tools here. And of course, when it comes to social interaction in the workplace particularly, then it's important that workplace individuals, employees of the future, interact with and collaborate with their colleagues. So building team skills should be a priority when thinking about workers of the future and developing workers and lifelong learners of the future, because that's also another place where they're going to be learning continuously through interaction with their colleagues in the workplace. And everyone needs to be a valuable member of a team. Everyone needs to learn how to collaborate and share their knowledge and experiences, as well as how to learn from one another, to get that learning, extract that learning out of the daily work. And that is something that can't really easily be taught. But I think in an educational setting, providing opportunities as much you can for group work and collaboration is one way to start to build those skills. And of course, many of those platforms that are used within businesses are also available for academic use. People need to be working on those platforms. So for instance, I use something like Yammer and Slack, which are more enterprise type platforms to host my social workshops that I run. And I know that Microsoft Teams, for instance, is also being widely used within education. In other words, what I'm saying is we don't need to try and keep that into sort of learning platforms. We need to give individuals exposure to these new social collaboration platforms that they're going to come to meet when they go into the workplace. And rather than thinking of learning as something that happens solely in a learning platform, recognizing that learning happens on a work-based platform just as much, if not more. So building the skills and exposure to some of these collaboration platforms will be important to help them move forward. And of course, there's a whole wide range of other communication and collaboration tools that individuals need to be able to use effectively for one-to-one and group interactions, from WhatsApp and Skype and Google Hangouts and so forth. I don't need to talk too much about those because I think that's quite clear. But I also pointed out earlier that a lot of how we learn at work takes place as people do their jobs, just by doing their jobs. So that's something we need to begin to help our people, our students, understand. How can they learn from the work? Now, there will be tools we can help them use to improve their productivity and their own self-improvement. And we can look helping them use a range of office tools as well as productivity tools. And also a whole range of tools that they might use outside the workplace in their own personal lives as well. But I think one of the key ways to really help them get the most out of their continuous professional learning in the workplace is to help them establish a daily habit of reflection, what they've learned from their daily work experiences. And again, this is where those digital notebooks and blogging tools can come in very handy, because they can be used as work journals, as places to reflect on the daily work. Now, reflective practices are well known in many professions, but I think it's got to be important for everybody now, because as the saying goes, you don't learn from experience, you learn from reflecting on experience. So I think that's another fundamental skill that individuals will need to take them into the future. So I've covered quite a few tools here in my digital learning toolkit. And of course, not everybody will use all these tools. You need to find the ones that suit you best. So for instance, if you look at my tool set, I'll take out some of the tools and just leave the ones that I use. This is my toolkit. These are the key tools that I use to take me through my work, to help me learn continuously, and to help me collaborate with people and to interact with people and to reflect on what I do on a daily basis to ensure that I'm a modern professional learner. So we're coming towards the end now, and I would really like to hear how you are consider yourself a modern professional learner, because I think you can't help somebody else become one until you are one yourself. So what are the areas you think you need to focus on to perhaps become a more rounded professional learner of the future? Let's just spend 5 minutes looking at that, and then, well, 3 or 4 minutes anyway, then I'll just show you where you can get a copy of my digital learning toolkit to download, and you can take that away and think about it further. So what other areas then do you think you need to focus on to become a more rounded modern professional learner? Let's have a look. So we're thinking about adding 2 applications for your teaching. That's improving your own professional practice. That's important too. It's important to think about what's happening out in the outside world. How are you ensuring you're keeping a regular flow of new ideas coming into your brain, into your own work? You need more hours in your day. Well, you don't have to. If you just take 20 minutes a day to do something, that's important. 20 minutes of dead time when you're on the bus or the train, that's important. Use a tool like Pocket or something, just define something to keep it there and just check it out. Or take that 20 minutes to reflect on what you've done. You don't need hours. Some people, if they need hours, they'll find the hours. But if you just need a short amount of time, just spend 20 minutes on something every day to build that habit of continuous learning. And as I said, that's what I do. I mean, I actually spend more time than that because I have the time and I think it's important for me. But you don't need to spend hours, just a small amount of time to reflect, to find something new, or to read something, to view something. And then you've got to keep yourself away from the emails then. Let's just spend some me time on doing something for me to improve myself, to take me forward. But it's important that you have these skills, because you can't help other people with these modern professional skills unless you have them yourself. You can't tell them what to do. You've got to show them how to do it. So I really think that's a key thing. But time is important, and that's a key skill for the future, prioritizing your time. Anyway, I'm just going to finish off now. So let me just show you. We talked about this toolkit. I've produced this PDF, and in the PDF you can click on any of the tools and it will take you to a page at the Top Tools website where you can find out more about it. So if you'd like to find out, excuse me, if you'd like to get a copy of the tools kit, oh, that's not too good, is it? We've now got some blank pages. Not doing too well here. Then perhaps you could pop in that URL, Ruta. All I do is if you go to something called modernprofessionallearning.com, there it is, Ruta, thank you very much. You go there and you click a link to Modern Professional Learning, new mindset, new skill set, and new tool set. You will find a copy of that toolkit, which you can download. And you have a copy of it for yourself. And it will link, here we are, there's another screen coming up now, that's good, let's see. Share my screen, can I do that? Can I find the, oops, no, we're going to get another PowerPoint presentation. I thought I might be able to get the URL up, but if not, we'll just wait for it to load up and see if we can get that slide at the end. Then you can see what it looks like. And we won't have to just imagine it. Let's see, here we go. Oh, oops, there you are, sorry, there you go. Shall we make, can we make that bigger? People need to do that for themselves, increase the size. So if you go to modernprofessionallearning.com, here it comes. You can see the URL at the top there. And if you, that's the main page. And if you go down under where it says introduction, you can see it says Modern Professional Learning, a new mindset, tool set, and skill set. If you go there, you will find that infographic that you can download. And also there, what you'll see is this whole resource, which is 60 tasks about how to help yourself and also help others become modern lifelong learners. 60 things to think about, and each of those will take probably 20 minutes to do, maybe less, maybe more, but helps you think this through. And what a good thing to do is you could do one every day for a couple of months or perhaps more at a time, but it really helps you to think about some of the little activities that you can do, start building those skills about preparing yourself for the future and preparing your students for the future. So we're coming to the end now, Ruta. So thank you very much for inviting me again. Sorry we've had a few problems with the slides, but I think we've seen pretty much everything now. And as I say, lots of resources there for you to download if you would like to take it further. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jane. I hope you can hear me. And thank you for this marvelous insight. I think it's very good from time to time to have something for the teachers, not exactly talking about the students, but something for the teachers that they can then afterwards, after reflecting on their own practice, then apply and help their own students move on. I think it was very, very interesting. And I would like to ask now if you have any burning question for Jane. Now would be the moment. Thank you for being so attentive. So let's just wait a few moments to see if there's any question. Of course, we will share all the URLs that we were sharing during the presentation and also the slides. We will share afterwards. So there's no burning question.
That's good.
It was very clear, yes. Oh, one question. But I'm not sure if you can actually answer that.
I can't see us.
So the question is, will
Will
compulsory
will
education change in
compulsory education change? I hope so.
the...
Don't you?
I do hope so.
But we've been doing it for so long in the same ways. It's very difficult, and most of my work's within work in training, educate in companies, and they've been doing it for so long the same ways. It's very difficult to change. But I think beginning to see people thinking differently, and certainly some schools and universities thinking much more about having a much more collaborative approach and interactive approach rather than just a sort of broadcast delivery. So I think we are seeing some change, but I think the future we need to be building people who can kind of cope with the new world of work for themselves, because what we've got now really isn't fit for purpose for the future.
Thank you, Jane. I think it's exactly what one of the participants posted on the chat in the very beginning of the seminar, and it's a sentence by Alvin Toffler, which is, we need to learn, unlearn, and relearn every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Good quote.
So if there's no more burning questions to Jane, I think I'll just thank you, Jane, for being here with us. eTwinning is a very vibrant community. I think it can be in some ways considered as a professional learning network, actually. So it's very, very nice to have you with us. And I would like just to try to put back my slides, yes, here, back again. Sorry for the issues with the slides, but sometimes technology doesn't work as we want. So we just need to cope with it. I think we managed to show all the slides that we wanted. So for the next seminar, I invite you to go to the professional development page on eTwinning Live, keep up to date with the learning event and also with the online seminars. So thank you for being here today. Soon you will receive the certificates and all the materials shared today during the seminar. Thank you once more. Thank you again, Jane, and hope to see you in another eTwinning initiatives, Jane.